Adam, thank you very much for doing this, mate.
Pleasure to be here.
Just a quick overview of parents with questions, who they are, and what their aim and purpose is.
Look, the aim and purpose is clear. That's to protect Australian kids. Specifically, we formed in response to the impending rollout of the jab for 5 to 11-year-olds, knowing how many dangerous side effects and adverse reactions were happening in the adult population last year and still are. Just with the knowledge that the government's going to try and force this stuff on our little ones, we really felt compelled to act. So it was really protecting kids from something which is, just is proven to be completely unnecessary in terms of their, they have good, strong immune systems for the most part. There's very few kids get sick from the virus itself, and the jab seems to be, from our perspective, it seems to be all risk and no reward. And the media sort of blackout, if you like, or the media bias that has told us one story and one story only, which is get the jab, it's no big deal, and it's no. And that, as a parent, for me, was like handing over and abdicating a whole bunch of responsibility that I've always taken for my kids, and my wife does too. So as a parent, I think as parents we all do. We all know what's right for our kids. We look after them. And just this media bias that we're just supposed to abdicate that responsibility over to a government which, I never trusted in the first place, felt very, very wrong. So that's why we formed. We needed to create a counter narrative to the jab being the only option and being such a cheap and easy and such a convenient, not cheap, but convenient solution. So we really wanted to tell a different story because we had information that was different, very, very different to what we're hearing on the news every night. In terms of who we are, we're a bunch of parents and donors. Some of not even parents, just community members who care about the next generation. So we're people that sat together in a campfire similar to this, and literally said, well, what can we do? How do we have some agency in this? How do we protect not just our kids, but let parents everywhere know both sides of a story, both sides of a narrative, and let them make decisions from there. So that's really what we threw some money in a pot, got going. We got some good marketers and people on board, and I understand messaging and marketing quite well. So that's really where it formed in a nutshell. And so far it's been pretty successful. We've had a lot of, we'll never be able to measure it, is the honest truth, but the reality is the jab rollout for the 5 to 11-year-old age group has lagged right behind their intended numbers, which we're very happy about because, as I said, it's this high risk option with no tangible reward attached. And we've managed, I think, to convince a lot of parents to at least question the narrative, which is really what we're about. We have never taken a hardline view, even though I have personally some hardline views, but the narrative that we've put forward is not to be hardline about it. It's been about saying, look, before you go and do something that's irreversible for your kids, make sure you've got both sides of the story. Make sure all the information is available to you. And that's really been all we're trying to do. Ultimately, is like, we respect your right as a parent, we respect your intelligence, but make sure you've got all the intel. You're not getting it just from the news.
What are the practical steps that you guys have initiated?
Look, there's a number of things happening, but the main things are we've got a website and a social media presence, which has had enormous reach. I have to say, it's gone ballistic and into the 23 or 24 million plus views on social media. But really, what we've got on the website there is a resource that tells both sides of the story. So it addresses all the common questions that we have as parents about the jab, and hearing the information in a balance. We don't go down rabbit holes and go down to the conspiracies and stuff, but we just go, well, what's the reality of this? What do I need to know as a parent? And answer some of those things from a point of view of we've interviewed very good doctors, world-leading experts, so we're not the source of information, we just curate it, if you like. So we've got some question and answers. We've got some great interviews and resources from very, very educated people who give you a different narrative, who just haven't had a platform. And we also give, I guess, there's an important tool, which is parents who have friends who have kids, or anyone who's got friends who've got kids that are currently about to go and stick a needle in their kids because they think that's the right thing to do because they love their kids. Most of us want to interrupt that process and go, can we think twice about this before we do it? Once we sort of tune into what's really going on out there and how dangerous this thing is for kids, we all start thinking, okay, well, how do we have conversations with other people? And typically that comes from, and I found this myself, there's a lot of the conversations where I'll go out and throw all these facts at you and chuck information and facts, and the facts will speak for themselves and you'll be converted to my point of view. And that typically has not worked across the board at all for anyone. So we decided to interrupt that, if you like, by I think they call it the Socratic method of asking questions to allow the person you're asking to come to their own conclusions. So we've got some training on there and some resources to help people have better, more constructive conversations with others who have an entrenched position opposite to their own. And that's been really, really helpful. So the practical stuff is just how to have sticky conversations with people that have a different view to us. So what we found is that nearly every parent, it's almost there was this kind of there's a divide in society. There was 30% who said, "I'll do whatever I'm told and I'll trust it implicitly," and then there's 30% on the other end who completely doubt everything they get told, or at least look at it and really question it, and then they can call them free thinkers, anti-vaxxers, or whatever you want to call them. But parents, particularly as parents, we went, we need to think twice about this. A lot of parents in our group, by the way, have had the jab themselves, had to, for work and different reasons, have gone ahead and had it. So they're not anti the thing, but they're anti-coercion, and they're certainly anti-taking the risk with their kids. It's important to note. But then there's the 40% in the middle who are undecided either way. And we kind of saw that as as people we want to talk to and just give them at least information and the courtesy. See, to make informed consent, informed is a key thing. You need to have information. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting that. And I can tell you that firsthand is that censorship is very, very real in the media. Yep. And I'll give you a lot of good examples of that, but even to the extent we had a billboard campaign ready to go. We raised quite a lot of money. We had a national billboard campaign ready to go out, which didn't go out because they wouldn't accept it. It was very mainstream, very sort of gentle, well worded. It wasn't in your face anti-vax or anything. It was just simply a message about asking better questions. Yeah. And that got canned. So, as in not allowed by the advertising standards. So we've been taken down on social media umpteen times. We've had accounts hacked. So media, we're not getting fed the whole story. There's no doubt, right? Unless you're on alternative media. So that 40% in the middle isn't getting given all the information they genuinely need to make a good decision. So that's what we're facing. That's what we're up against as a movement. We believe that every parent, we operate from the fundamental, right? We love our kids. Simple as that. We just want to do the right thing by them. What matters, I think, about the fact of being blocked and censored is why we're being blocked and censored is a question we need to ask. Do we know the solution? Do we know the answer? Not necessarily. I can't prove any answer. But the fact it's true, we need to be A, aware of it, and B, ask, well, why? And if they're blocking information that is relevant to my child's health, my health and well-being, then who the hell should I trust? That's really what we need to come back to, is go, well, we can't trust them. We can't trust the government, we can't trust the media. And if you come back to that as a standing position, your whole decision-making process around our life choices changes. And that's really what I've seen the divide between in society right now is we've got those who trust the narrative and those who don't. And anyone who, they call us anti-vaxxers and all this other kind of thing, and conspiracy theorists and so on, but we're just simply everyday people who have learnt to question what we get told every day and dig a little bit deeper. I'll put my own hand up. I was completely mainstream, bought into the narrative for most of my life, and it's only in the last 2 or 3 years I've gone, hang on, something doesn't stack up here. Something stinks. There's something about this narrative I'm being told does not stack up. With COVID, it was very clear to me early on. Initially we all went into shock and meltdown and lockdown, all that, and I was bought into that, sure. Didn't want anyone to get sick and so on. But it very quickly I started to go, well, hang on, I couldn't see anyone who was sick from COVID until the last variant. So that initial thing of everyone dying in the streets in China, that was just fear. And once you've got people in a state of fear, you can then amplify that fear and have them do things like lock themselves down and these things they would normally not do, and give their businesses up, their freedom up. And then suddenly the government's got a solution for us, which is, guess what, we've got a jab. You just got to do as you're told. Line up, we've got this solution, it's going to fix everything. There's your call to action, go get it. So that's a sales formula. I've been in sales my whole life, and that is how you sell stuff. You get people in a heightened state of emotion, ramp it up a bit more, then you say, no, it's okay, here's a solution, here's some proof. Don't worry, you're not the only one doing it. There's a whole army of people out there doing the same thing as you, so you're not the only guy to get it wrong. There's what you do next. That's the sales formula, and that's what I could see playing out. So, and I don't think I'm not the only one who could see that. We all felt there was something shifty going on. So we question everything now.
Good. I'm in that same bag. Where you the practical help, the resources that you might have developed or something like that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, like I said, if there's questions and answers, frequently asked questions for parents. What do I do? What about this part of the kid? What do I do instead? Questions like, is this thing dangerous for my child? What are the real risks? What are the real rewards? Are there alternatives? And what we found out, this is probably the great irony in all of it, is, and this again comes down to repression and censorship, but there is a whole lot we can do. Again, I come out of the health industry, so I come from a health background. And before you go and take an untested experimental vaccine, there's a multitude of steps you can take to get yourself healthier and to get your kids healthier and arm your immune system up. All right? On a simple level, and this comes from Professor Ian Brighthope. He's one of the leading lights worldwide in the. He's also the founder of the Australian College of Nutritional and Environmental Medicine. So nutritional and environmental factors, as well as emotional factors, can play an enormous benefit. What that looks like for kids, make sure, well, ideally they're happy, helps. They have connection, it helps. They can go to school and all that kind of stuff. Ideally, that all helps, right? They're outside, they're getting vitamin D. They get zinc, C, and vitamin D as a supplement regime. And you feed them fresh, healthy food. You keep them well hydrated. You don't give them McDonald's. You don't give them Coca-Cola. You don't feed them all that shit that people eat every day. Get them outside doing some exercise, boost their immune system. Get them connected with their feet on the grass. Those things, doesn't sound simple, is what produces healthy kids. That's why we, I'm 50 and I grew up with my feet in the dirt and getting messy every day and dirty, and that's why I'm healthy now. So anyway, they're the things that you can do long before you think about taking a drug. Any kind of drug, let alone an experimental one that's only improved, 6-12 months ago. So that's some of the stuff that's on there on the website. And as I said, the How to Have Sticky Conversations is a whole video piece there. We've got a psychologist there, Lindsay Williams, who's a fabulous caring psychologist who just talks about how to have those sort of unbiased conversations. We've all had conversations with family and people we care about this, and been shut down and been told to piss off because we're all kooky. But having that from a point of view that isn't alienating the person you're talking to is important. So there's some of the main resources. As well as the other things on there is a whole bunch of social proof. If you're just coming into this line of thinking now, and a lot of parents are, because we think twice about, like I said, we care more about our own kids' health than we do about our own typically, in reality, and our behaviour-wise at least. A lot of parents coming on there now, and they're finding that there's a whole bunch of other parents whole bunch of celebrities. There's a whole bunch of people on there coming out and saying, you know, no, I'm not going to do this because I'm not comfortable with it. So we find that our opinion is validated through where our ability to make a decision for ourselves is validated because there's others out there exactly the same. And that's hard right now. If you're in a position where you're the only person in your community or in your circle of friends who is questioning this, it's very alienating. It's tough. There's a dog having a lick in the dregs of it. It's actually bone broth, so he's eating that.
Bone broth.
Yeah. So that's a big one. The social isolation. So I think what we do with this, with our community, with these parents with questions, it's a community. It's a connections and it's community, and it's confirmation too that you're not nuts and you're not on your own. There's millions of other people out there just like us right now.
I filmed Steve Roberts talking at the People's Revolution in Brisbane, and in the middle of his speech he talked about who do you want to turn up as? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well look, Steve's one of our local activators. He's been really big out there in the Toowoomba community, real leader in the community through this, and he's a good example of what I've been saying for a long time. We don't miss the moment and don't miss the message in this.
Yeah.
Because beyond saying, oh well, I'll just look after my kids and that's the end of it. We'll do what's right for my family and that's the end of it. There's also a calling of how do we need to turn up? Who do we need? What's being asked of us right now as a community and as leaders and as parents and as elders? Dog's having a wrestle under your chair there. So as elders of the community, it's like you don't want to miss the moment and we don't want to miss the message in it. And guys like Steve, for example, a good example. It's like he has turned up in a way that, he was pretty quiet in the community. He was a school teacher, does some personal training. He's an exercise physiologist. But he's grabbed the moment and managed to organise rallies and events, and he's been up speaking and he's been active. He's been out doing flyer drops. That's the other thing we give people flyers and resources to download and print, so you can go and put things in letterboxes for to let other people know the message. So we're sort of circumventing the mainstream media. But guys like Steve have been out there doing that, for weeks and months now, off their own bat, and we've just enabled that through the Parents with Questions website and the resources. We gave him a little bit of help learning, with some words and what to say and how to present on stage. And he took that and ran with it, and he's a great example. He's a guy that's turned up as it's a bit of a cliche, but, right now there's cowards being exposed everywhere. These CEOs and bloody our government and so on, they're cowards. They're running away from things. They're taking the money. They're being corrupted. Yet everyday heroes are showing up, and they're people that just found something in themselves. They go, bugger this, I'm doing something about this right now. And I'm going to be active in it, I'm going to push back on it, and I'm going to speak up. Speaking up is actually the biggest one right now. Because most people have given, they're more interested in their bloody Facebook likes or not having some idiot on social media disagree with them than actually speaking their own truth. That's where we've got to as a society, where that's more important for a lot of people. And that's being weaponised against us. That's why we're all so compliant. We go, I better not disagree because someone might not like me. It's like, well, fuck that. Who cares if I don't get liked? I'm going to speak my truth. So we've got guys like Steve and Janelle on the Sunshine Coast, and I think it's Nicole down in South Australia, and there's people who jam out at Billawheeler. People all over this country have come out as spokespeople for Parents with Questions, and doing their own things as well, I should say. Many other things. We're not the only freedom movement. We're one of many fabulous freedom movements. But there's people out there speaking up for their truth and standing for something. And I think they're the heroes of today's heroes. Looking back, in the future we'll look back like, I think, look back at, Oskar Schindler in World War II and in Germany and go, they're the heroes, they're the people that did something. As opposed to, I'll just do as I'm told because, it's more convenient and, I don't want to upset anyone and the government's not that bad. And I was like, no, they are bad. They're trying to get us to do something completely against our will and coerce us to do things that are not necessarily in our best interest and take away our choice and our freedom. And they're trying to tell us how to run our kids and our family's health. Not on my fucking watch. No way. You know, so I think what the calling in that is to be that person, to be that leader in the community, to be that one who's active and speaking up. There's something we've got to give up in that, and there's something we need to embrace. So we need to give up the need to be liked, we need to be agreed with, we need to give up all the sort of social approval to some extent that we all crave and look for, and go, you know what? Leadership can be a little bit tricky. Leadership can be challenging, and it requires me and anyone who chooses it to be the best version of ourselves. We have to be in tune with what's in here and put the higher value on that, like truly in here, not just in our ego or in our own personal agenda, but you know, what does my heart say? What does the higher spirit, if you like, want me to do here? And act from that rather than act from ego, act from, you know, oh, everyone else is doing this, I'll just do the same. So no, I'm going to just go with what feels right. And they're the everyday heroes right now, I believe. So that's when I say, who are you going to turn up as? That's the question for all of us. What's the best version of ourselves? Our kids are looking at us right now through pretty naive eyes, seeing the world as normal like this. And I think there's an opportunity here for us to recognise ourselves as elders, really understand this concept of a village, to raise our kids and us, any adult now. Even if you're 17-year-old, you're an adult to kids who are my age, the kids of my age. What sort of elders are we being for those kids? Because we've got this opportunity to set up, to really, excuse the language, to completely fuck up or set up the next 7 generations here. You know, we let the government do what they're doing to this generation right now, and they're going to be in for a long haul pushback. You know, it's going to be a long, long haul before the health problems are going to be traumatic. I believe traumatic. As a result of the jab, but I think the social disconnect and the way they're trying to make us live our lives and the lack of freedom really concerns me in terms of what I want for my kids. It's not the world I've chosen for them. Well, it probably is, unfortunately, subconsciously. But I'm now pushing back on that. As opposed to, I want to be the best version of me so they can stand on my shoulders and be better than me. And that's really what I think our job is as parents and as elders, is give our next generation big shoulders to stand on, because they're going to need it. Just on this topic of like accessing intuition and things, you know, I'm not an expert at it, but I know it's probably a lesson I've really learned as a parent, is to be, and my wife say the same. So, you know, to really tune into what feels right as a parent. You know, what if you need to give your kid a medication, or particularly around their health, their emotional well-being. That's something I think we all learn to tune into naturally for our kids. But also believe it's something that's been knocked around out of us a bit. We've been told not to trust it. We've been told, you know, even in the last couple of years, trust the science, trust the science. How about trust yourself first? You know, science is supposed to be an exploration, not a conclusion. It's supposed to be, you know, something we test and measure and prove wrong and right, not bloody, it's the end of it. So our intuition has been overridden to a large degree in the narrative, and I think our distracted lifestyle is also, and I'm speaking for myself as much as anyone else here, led us to sort of tune out to the intuition a bit and go, oh well, I'll just put on Netflix, or I'll look at Facebook, and you know, so that stuff gets us away from what's going on here and here, and it just, so we're naturally intuitive. Everyone's got it, and most of us know that as parents. We get that sense of what's, you know, is my kid okay, and we know when they're not, even if it's, you know, you can't hear them, and you just get that gut feeling, and we trust it. And we've just been taught not to trust it on lots of other levels. And I think it's something we can challenge, because, like I said, we've been tuned into our kids for most instances, since before they were born. We've been tuned into them emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, you know, like in terms of that intuition. You don't have to give that up now. We can reclaim that. We've been told that the government knows best, and it's not the case.
Assigning your the welfare of your family over to a bureaucrat in an office somewhere doesn't seem to ring true.
Well, especially when they've got financial incentives to, behind them to do so. It's the thing. So everyone, you just got to follow the money with this stuff. If you don't believe me, just go and do your own research and look at where the money, who's making money out of it, who's being coerced, corrupted, or paid, or any version of that, and that gives you a lot of explanations. I can tell you now, Parents' Questions isn't being paid for shit. We're funding this. We've got everything to lose and everything to spend on it. Not anything to gain out of it. There's certainly nothing in this for me. It's quite the opposite. I've put my life on hold for this and spent, given up a lot of time, money, and effort to this cause, with nothing to gain other than when you get parents come up and say thank you and say thanks for what you're doing, because it's actually made me think twice before I gave this to my kids. That's the only reward that's in it, which is worth everything, by the way. But and you get bureaucrats, as you said, or big pharma executives, or even GPs who are out there now doing what they're told. What's in it for the so the big pharma executives make money. How do the bureaucrats make money? Well, there's who's been coercing them and paying them for all these years. But I can tell you, with having worked inside the medical system as a business advisor, GPs get coerced as well, and not through not brown paper bag bribes, but they get coerced through compliance with the narrative. They have to comply. As soon as your GP stops complying and doing what the AMA tell them to do, they get they get not penalised, but singled out, and so look, either toe the line or you'll be deregistered. So they've got 10, 15 years worth of study in their whole career. The only thing they can do is go be a doctor. And if they disagree with what they're being told, they get told you're not going to be a doctor anymore, which means what do they do then? They got nothing else.
I had that conversation with my GP,
Yeah.
and he said, I can't talk to you about that because I'll be deregistered.
That is on paper, and so that came out from APRA saying,
Yes.
if you advise against the narrative around vaccine, you will be you'll be penalised and singled out. So you got to recognise as a consumer that we're not even getting GPs that we can trust at the moment. Lismore Hospital now is working at about 20-30% of its capability, I've been told by people who work there, because they can't find doctors and staff. Like all elective surgeries cancelled. Well, right now it'd be half underwater, and under a lot of pressure from the floods out there now. I say there because it's right there. But before that, even before the floods hit, they were understaffed, and it's like ambulance understaffed. So they sack all these people in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Go figure. I've got a friend who's right now. I saw her the other day just as the floodwaters hit just down the road here, and I saw her and put my arm around her and said, "You okay?" And she said, "Yeah." And she was in tears. I said, "What's going on? Have you lost your home?" She says, "No, I'm a nurse. I've got 16 years experience. Because I won't take the jab because I've seen what it can do to people. I've seen the reactions. I can't go to work, so she's been sacked. In the meantime, they're allowing positive testing, people who've had the jab but have had a positive test for COVID, to go back to work because they need the help. She's not allowed in. So go figure.
To recap again, what are the practical things that Parents with Questions are doing that the community can engage with?
Look, number one call to action is sign up. Put your email address into the website if you want to be part of the community, because social media is pretty unreliable in terms of staying in touch. But once you're signed up, there's a few things we invite you to do, and one is to use the resources and the downloadable resources and the Q&A, the FAQ, frequently asked questions and so on, and use that and share it with your friends and family to have more constructive conversations, and offer it as rather than saying, "Here, you should look at this, you silly bastard," because you can't elevate someone's consciousness by calling them a dickhead. We just got to offer it out of as a genuine offer. Say, "Here, I've just been reading this. I just wonder if you're interested in to have a look at this. I found it really relevant when I've been thinking about whether or not to vaccinate my kids. I wonder if you might find it helpful as well." So often in the spirit of that, You'll find some really good resources there. And then secondly, if you really want to get involved and go out and put these things in letterboxes, become what we call a local activator. So you can get involved on a local level, and really what you'll find as a local activator is you can do things like put letterbox drops out, you can do community meetings, you can get parents together to talk about initiatives you want to put together in your region. But ultimately it's about spreading the word, but the sort of byproduct of that is it's getting past this sense of loneliness often we get by choosing a different path and being maybe going away from the mainstream narrative, is we end up socially a bit isolated, and that's hard when we all get kids as well. So by being a local activator, you actually find this leadership position where you bring the community in around you, and you create this sense of connection and community in your region. And we like to see every region in Australia with a group of local activators, because we need it. We need options. There's arguably, hopefully this is all blown over now that we've got floods and wars and other things going on. There's a part of me hopes that COVID narrative is falling apart and we can just move on to something else. Won't be necessarily any better, like a war, but it won't be putting our kids at risk. But if that's not the case, and they do keep coming after the kids, and they do keep chasing the children to be jabbed the way they've chased other people in terms of coercion and bloody mandates and so on, and frigging vaccine passports. If it gets to that, we're going to need to homeschool. We're going to have to get them out of the homeschool. We have to out of the system altogether. We can't trust our kids to people who don't have the same values as us, particularly around something which can't be reversed medically. So we need connection. We need people around us. We need good people who have got our back, and they are quite likely not necessarily who you're connected with now. That's the what we found to be true over and over and again, and I certainly found it to be true for myself and my family, is the people we connect with now aren't the people I expected to be there in an emergency. They've got different views to me, so people that are there, I've discovered lots of great things about people I otherwise didn't associate with previously. So it's very interesting. We need community, we need connections, we need resources around us. There'll be people who, when they lose their jobs and lose their homes because of mandates and so on, there's people who've been living on couches and caravans in people's backyards, that kind of thing. I think we saw this is like, I'm sitting here in northern New South Wales now, Jeff, and as you know, the floods down here have just, to say they're devastating and catastrophic, I think it's hard to demonstrate how big it's been down here. It's really hard until you get and see it on the ground how utterly decimated the communities around here have become. And it's horrible, but what we've seen in it is something really amazing, and that is people have just forgotten about the division that was there between them. Before 2 weeks ago, they're yelling at you to put a mask on in the shop, or checking each other's vaccine passports, and all this, to my mind, utter bullshit. They were all coerced and tied up in all that. Now they're in an emergency, and the community is looking after each other. They are rescuing people. They're pulling people off roofs. They're taking in families. They're taking each other in. They're donating time, money, and goods and clothes, and they're just doing so much. I was out, as so many others have been out helping at Lismore and Bexhill and out here the last few days. And when someone pulls up with a hot meal, when you're out there covered in mud and says, "Here, would you like something to eat?" and they don't ask for money, they just say, "Go, thank you, go do it." It just reminds you what humanity is about. It reminded me that people are inherently good, and they want to help each other, and we care for each other. So it's given me personally a lot of hope. But that's what community connection's about. Hopefully, you don't need an obvious natural disaster in order to coalesce that around your community, as if you're listening to this. To my mind, what's happened with COVID and the jab response, the jab rollout, particularly for the young ones, but for all of us, to me that has been a national emergency. Not because of the disease, but because of the response to the disease. It's the separation that's been created, the division, the lack of freedoms, the ability not to cross, we can't cross borders, and then, losing your job unless you get injected with some experimental shit. I'm just like, what the hell? that is a national emergency, and the kids rollout for me was the final straw. I said, no way in God's earth will I sit around and let a bunch of little kids get thrown under the big pharma bus. So I guess the community that's happened around Parents with Questions is a bit like the community that's happening out there at Lismore now, and Wollumbar and Woodburn, all these other little towns around here, is that we've come together knowing there's a crisis forming around us, and we're knowing that we need strength in numbers. We need to rely on each other, back each other up, even just to confirm our decisions. Because a lot of people have said, no, I'm not going to do it, not going to do it, and they finally roll over out of exhaustion and do it. And we need to look after each other at this time. So we've been in a national emergency. Didn't look like what they were showing us on TV. We're still in it. You know, we're still in it. It sort of seems to be changing shape daily, but it's still there. Shore yourself up, resource yourself up is my advice to everyone. And what we're doing as a family is being the right people around us who are like-minded, making sure we've got, you know, food and water if we can, having access to power, and just some basics, because around here, what I've figured out real quick is, you know, 2 days worth of cut off supply chain, and we don't have any food in the supermarket. So literally, there's no food, there's no fuel, there's no power, no internet for a week, or last week. Now, that's when we figure out what community is about, because you rely on other people to look after us. We rely on knocking on a door rather than checking a Facebook post. Knocking on someone's door, saying, "Are you here? Are you okay?" That's what we come back to. So that's the gift in all this stuff that's happening here now. I think that's the gift in the Parents with Questions movement, is the ability to feel really deeply connected to others.